Emily. Thanks for coming on the podcast today. I'm really excited to get to know you and hear about what you're offering and how nutrition can play a role in pregnancy, birth, and postpartum.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about what got you into nutrition, this line of work.
Yeah, it's a big story, as I'm sure a lot of, getting into these types of healing work and careers can be. My mom, as a baby about 7 years old, kind of introduced some holistic healing and modalities in our lives, and I noticed a shift in like the way that we ate around that time as well. My mom had Crohn's from when she was 16, and then when I was about 7 or 8, she kind of had some sort of healing crisis or health crisis going on, and their doctors really couldn't pinpoint or understand what was happening for her. And my youngest sister at the time was just born, and so she started to look at like other healing modalities. And so she, like, I always kind of joke, she used to make us like black bean cookies, and like she would dump out half of the like 2% milk and put in like skim. So I noticed a shift in like what we were eating, but it didn't really understand like the depth of nutrition or like health or like really what she was doing. And I would go to like acupuncture appointments with her and go to like these cranial sacral, and I was like, like, what are we doing, Mom? And I, especially being like a teenager, I'm like, okay, my mom's a crazy hippie and she's saging. And
I love it. Almond mom is what they call them now. That's so cool. Yeah, that's gonna be me for sure.
Me as well. Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, now I'm like, oh, Mom was so on it. But that was like some of my slow introductions to it, and I didn't really think about like food and nutrition. Like, I played soccer, but like still, even like that, like I wasn't really thinking about like what I ate at all. And when I was 19, I had a boyfriend for 10 years on and off since we were quite young, and at the time he got diagnosed with cancer. He had leukemia.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it was a pretty big thing to go through, especially like as a young adult, and I just had so many questions, and I really wanted to help him through that process. And so that was kind of my first awakening really of like what food can do and like the power of that as well. In that context, it was interesting because he could only really eat McDonald's, and I'm like, oh my, like you're just eating McDonald's. I'm like freaking out. I'm asking the doctors like, what can he do? What can he eat? Like, is brown sugar okay? So I had all these questions, and I just felt like I wasn't really getting any answers. I mean, I know things have changed quite a bit and there's more awareness of that, but it was 2012, and I just kind of got met with like dead ends. Like, we don't know why this happens. There's nothing we can really do. We even like went to go see a dietitian, and even like with the knowledge that I had at the time, I just kind of felt like I could have Googled it. So that really just was like, I want to learn more about this. I want to learn more about what we can eat. But at the time it was very fear driven, and I was experiencing like, what can I even eat? Like, I kind of went the opposite way for a bit, where I was like checking all the labels and like, can I even eat this apple? It has like, coating on it. And so it's kind of gone through a process. And at the time as well, I was also doing school for an arts degree, and I was like, I really want to do nutrition, but I don't have any science background. And I was working at the University of Alberta in the genetics cancer clinic, and just as like a secretary, not in any like nutritional role or anything like that. But I remember reading the charts that the dietitians had at the time for some of the patients, and the reason why I didn't go the dietitian route was I felt like I would have been really restricted in what I was going to be saying. I know that there's some restrictions in terms of like your supplement recommendations, and I just wanted to learn more of a holistic approach to food, and I wanted to be able to speak freely in terms of like what I thought would be helpful. And again, I think that's like really changed quite a lot since I made that decision at the time, but that kind of led me to think, okay, I want to do holistic nutrition, but I didn't want to do like a 1-year diploma. And so I found Pacific Rim in Victoria, and that was a really amazing program. My teachers there were just like so knowledgeable, and it really taught me the depth of nutrition that I wanted to learn as well, in terms of like food energetics. And we did like Chinese medicine, we did Ayurvedic medicine, and that was like really what I was looking for, because I don't feel like nutrition is just like get your macros, like eating chia seeds and like goji berries all day, and also understanding that that's also like a privilege too. And so it really just kind of went back to simplicity and what is food, and like what are the energetics of food. And you know, not labeling things as good or bad, and then also like it's not necessarily even like what you're eating, maybe it's how you're eating it, or maybe you just need to add something else into it to make it like more digestible for you. And so just kind of taking away that restrictive piece and like maybe some of that fear piece as well was like
for people.
It's really blew my mind, honestly. And so it came from really wanting to help people, and I've kind of transformed, you know, maybe some of my fears that I've had into more of a space to help other people. And I hope that maybe that experience, that fear that I went through at the time can, you know, lend an ear to somebody who understands, you know, that feeling. And so, it's kind of a big story now. Just kind of
no, thank you for sharing. I think that like part of the reason maybe I've been hesitant to even work on my nutrition is the fear of like the restriction and what I can and can't eat, and knowing that you can work with somebody who is a little bit more fluid and relaxed about that kind of thing and not labeling things as good and bad. Just because I grew up in a family where there's like bad food and there's good food and judgment and that kind of thing. So especially with pregnancy, there's lots of the good and the bad. So I'd love to jump into that a bit more. But no, thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, thank you.
So I was curious about nutrition and how my clients can be best supported through pregnancy as one chapter, birth, although just a day or two, maybe hopefully only a day or two or less, and then postpartum, because I know there might be a blend, a crossover of all three, but then there's also the individual needs of each chapter. So I'd love for you to chat about what kind of supplements you recommend, what kind of foods you would probably have most people attempt to eat, or maybe I don't know, I'm labeling good and bad. So I'd love to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, and so the nice thing too is that a lot of these themes do cross over, and especially through like any point of your menstrual cycle. These really are foundational tools, but there are some things that are going to be a bit more beneficial for different trimesters in your pregnancy, and then labor and delivery. We have some other focuses as well, and then postpartum, of course. But I think trusting your intuition and doing what feels best for you first and foremost, especially through growing another human, can be a lot of pressure, and especially in terms of nutrition. I think people want to feel, you know, like, am I doing enough? Am I eating enough? And that is wonderful. And I love that people are getting curious about what they're eating and having a bit more intention with it, but also be gentle through what your cravings are, you know, and especially with that, going back to like labeling good and bad, you know, like sometimes that is the most nourishing thing that you can do is like listen to those cravings and like have that moment with yourself and indulge. And that doesn't make, you know, you like have any worse of like your growth and development of your baby, or, you know, like I want people to feel like they can do those things. For pregnancies, specifically first trimester, can be a lot of, you know, cravings, aversions, nausea, things like that can be coming up. And so I like to recommend people eating small meals or small snacks, especially if they're having a lot of nausea. And we don't really know why this happens. It could be from hormones. It also could be from like minerals deficiencies as well, especially if you're like vomiting quite a bit. Like we want to make sure that you're hydrating yourself and getting those mineral replacements. So that can be like magnesium, potassium. The easiest and like cheapest way of getting those are going to be back to fruits and vegetables, but also like lemons and limes are really nice to include in your water for like natural electrolytes. And again, just eating like the small meals. And so the first trimester, I like to encourage people, just be gentle, eat what you can. Try to get things that are going to be easy to digest, especially if you're having a lot of like morning sickness and like nausea. So even if that's just like toast and peanut butter, or like oatmeal, even like sweet potatoes, rice, like things that are just going to be like really soothing and easy to digest for your system. We don't want to have, if you're, you know, eating something that's going to be like really, really fatty, perhaps, like, and this could be like, doesn't necessarily have to be like fast food, but like maybe something like a fat could be triggering for some people for morning sickness. And
a fat,
like just like that nausea piece, because when we're looking, like some people who have difficulty digesting fat will get nausea or like a bit of back pain. So sometimes that can be a little bit queasy, I guess, is like, for lack of a word, for like some people. Or if we're having something that's like really, really hard to digest, like a big raw salad with like lots of nuts and seeds and something like that, it's going to be easier for your body to digest and assimilate a soup. So just kind of looking at it in that different ways, like not that that's like also a hard rule as well, but just having things that are just going to be easy to digest and like quick nutrients, like cottage cheese, hummus, like dips. Those are really good at just keeping things light, just not to overwhelm your system.
Perfect. What they call that, girl dinner?
Girl dinner, yes, absolutely, girl dinner, yes.
Except
just like,
not just an olive.
Yeah, some olives, some dates, totally. Like some hard parms, love that.
That's easy for most women because we love to snack. And like, I think most people, like my partner, he loves like sit down on like a hearty big meal. And I'm like, oh,
yeah.
This is exhausting.
I just want to like nibble, and like
little cheese, little crackers.
Indulge, totally. Yeah. So I think
cool. That's really neat. I didn't know that.
Yeah, for first trimester, I mean, girl dinner anytime really, but if that's usually what people are experiencing, depending. And then second trimester, so a few things could be helpful during the second trimester specifically. One would be a DHA supplement, and so DHA is specifically for the structural fats that we have in our brain and for our eyes as well. And you'll see on most omega supplements, like if they're indicating DHA and EPA, DHA is going to be really helpful for the development of the brain, and the second trimester is when that's going to be rapidly growing. And you can also find those through food as well. And so the thing that I like to encourage people, especially with DHA, because the food sources are going to be a lot of fish based as well. We can find them through chia seeds and through flax seeds, and there is a vegan supplement through Nutrici that is algae based as well. But some people might not want to be eating fish, or maybe they're not comfortable eating fish, so having a good quality DHA supplement from Nutrici is like my plug here. But I think they're really good quality and company, and you can get them in capsules. They're like flavored, so you're not having like gross like fishy kind of taste or anything like that. But if you wanted to do it through supplement, that's a good way to do that.
Is that different from fish oil?
So it's the same thing essentially. If depending if it's like a cod liver oil, like they're going to be different forms of it, but basically an omega supplement. But you're going to want to be looking for it to be labeled how much DHA and EPA they have in there. So I believe it is 200 milligrams of DHA that's recommended for pregnancy. So it should be indicating on there. Your omegas, depending on the brand, might not, but I would recommend looking specifically for omegas that say how much DHA they have in there. Okay.
And so you have supplements that you like a company that you work with specifically, and like would people have to book in with you to do that, or do you have like a website? Like how do they get access to good quality supplements?
Yeah, so I think locally, Lifestyles, Whole Foods, those are all places that I would be encouraging my patients to go. I do have an account through FullScript, so it does offer a 10% discount.
Oh, I love FullScript. Yeah, I use them too.
Yeah, they're great, and they have a wide variety because they also go through naturopathic services. So they have like Genestra and some other companies there as well. But some brands that I really like would be Natural Factors. I do feel like they're good for like a baseline supplement and they're also, I think, BC based or Vancouver based. I might be getting them confused with a different company, but I thought that they were. And then Sisu is another one as well that I like. They have really good vitamin C, zinc supplements. And then for omegas, the Nutrici I like the best.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Sweet. I know there's like a lot of garbage supplements out there, so I always like to ask.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then so are those like, would you, probably what, like folic acid would be another obvious one? Or,
yeah. So especially for the second trimester, I mean, like the earlier the better. If you're just taking B vitamins, I'm like, great, you're going to be having that. And we do have it through food. And there is a lot of talk about folate versus folic acid. So I don't know if that's like come up at all with like anybody on your end for patients, but folate is the natural source, and then folic acid is the synthetic source.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's like a hot topic. But for people that have there's a mutated gene that makes it difficult for them to convert the active forms of B vitamins in their body. So synthetic folic acid, which is what you're going to be finding in supplements, you want to make sure that it says methylfolate, and that just means that it's an active form of that B vitamin.
Okay.
So that is important for neural tube defects for spina bifida. And it is recommended to start that in preconception if you can, and if you're planning for it, as early as you can. But most, I think, multivitamins, especially prenatal, are going to have that. And I believe the recommendation is 600 micrograms. So again, like checking the labels and seeing how much that is, you might need to take 2 is another one to have.
I take prenatals already. I'm not planning on getting pregnant in the next year or 2, like maybe 2 years. But they're just really good multivitamins with like everything's extra.
Yeah.
Pumped up.
Yeah, which I love.
Through full script as well.
Yeah.
My naturopath recommended it, so.
Yeah, cool. I love that. I think it's a really good way of getting like foundational nutrition, and also continuing your prenatals through feeding as well is another recommendation. And I think even in those last, but in like the first few years, you know, even if you're not feeding, continue with that, I think can be helpful just in terms of building back your reserves and getting like your storages and your minerals back to like pre-pregnancy.
Cool. Apparently they, Thrifties offers a year of free prenatal vitamins.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know this. A year?
Yeah. A year.
Wow.
You get 1 year for free. So I think it's for Thrifties, or one of the local grocery stores in Victoria does offer that.
Really cool.
And
okay.
I don't think there's any restrictions. You just get, you know, you don't have to be low income per se.
Wow. Well, that's amazing, because that can also be another barrier for people as well. Like those can be quite expensive. And 9 months of the year if you're taking that,
like $60 or $70 for mine.
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, I'm just gonna take this every second day.
Yeah.
Spread them out.
Yeah, it can be a huge barrier for sure. So I love that. I didn't know that. I'm looking more into that. Yeah.
Cool. What other recommendations do you have for pregnancy or birth? I'm sure there's like so many. This is such a broad topic.
Yeah. But. Well, also the thing that comes to mind with second trimester is that that's also when you're going to be testing for gestational diabetes, and so getting like some good macros and some blood sugar balancing, that's like another time where we could be focusing on that. And that I think is really essential, blood sugar balancing, for like anybody with a cycle. It's the first line of therapeutics basically that we were taught in school for hormone regulation. It's like just the MVP. It's like great for inflammation, fatigue, energy, PMS, cramps, and things like that. Anyone that has PCOS, like blood sugar balancing is super, super helpful. And I do find that that's like the number one thing in my practice that I am recommending. And I think it just kind of shows a light on like our lifestyles, and like we're just so busy, and like we're not always eating, and we're also taught like not to eat, you know, like don't eat breakfast and like fast, and it's just not really realistic, especially for anybody that has a menstrual cycle. We need that balance, and things are fluctuating all the time, but it's also really hard to like eat consistently and like regularly, especially if like you have kids and you're busy and you're working, like it's tough. But it certainly can make a difference in terms of how you feel. And so if you are at risk for gestational diabetes, blood sugar balancing and looking at how to build your plate and making sure you have all your macros present, and then looking at your carbs as well. And so we want carbs that are going to have fiber. They're called impact carbs. And so my easiest example is like you grab an apple for a snack, which is like great. Love that you're having a piece of fruit, but it's not balanced. And so even though that there is fiber in that apple, we do want to have protein and fat, because that's going to help to slow down the release of glucose.
So like some almond butter with that?
Totally. Almond butter, nuts and seeds. You can do cottage cheese and something like protein, fat, all included. Yeah, we do want to pair it with something. I know.
Naughty. I'm just thinking about the food I eat. I'm like, oh, what I've had today, smoothie. Mind you, it was a complete meal smoothie. It had all the good stuff in there. Yeah. And a granola bar. But
that's
I'm like,
great.
That's straight sugar. And I'm getting tested for PCOS. So, oh gosh, I'm like probably like, I just love sugar so much.
You know, it's funny because it's like we do think fruit as like sugar, but like there's so many other, like it's not like you're having white sugar, you know, it's going to be a completely different effect in your body. I don't mean to say just eating fruit is like bad, you know, or like that's going to completely spike your blood sugar, but it's just like focusing on really protein, I think, when it comes down to it. Like, does my snack have protein? Does my meal have protein? We don't want to forget about carbs, because if we don't have carbs, we can kind of go the opposite way, where we need those carbs to kind of ground our blood sugar and our nervous system. So it's not like one or the other, but for smoothie example, we can kind of tend to think of that as like having a lot of fruit and sugar, but you probably had, you know, other things in it too that also is going to help to ground the blood sugar, the glucose.
Yeah. So it's like protein, like Greek yogurt, protein powder,
perfect,
nuts.
Yeah.
I put ginger.
Love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And prune juice.
Prune juice. Okay, I like it.
Like high quality, $20 prune juice.
Oh, that is bougie. I love it.
I know, a little bougie, but
like
I do. Yeah, I've heard it was good. Well, for the digestion. So
yeah, it is. Yeah. And so I think, like, you know, smoothie that's going to have more than one thing in it, as opposed to, if you want to compare that to like juice is just something that's going to be going straight to your bloodstream and straight to your liver as well, because of the fructose in there. So you're kind of stripping all of the nutrients and like the fiber from that, and that's going to have more of an impact on your blood sugar. But let's not like write off juice. You know, if you're going to have juice, have like a granola bar or like something else with it. Yeah. And so that's what I love about, you know, just not really isolating foods as like, oh, I can't have this because of this, but like, what can we just add to make it, you know, a little bit better for ourselves.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving into third trimester / birth, how does that differ from the second trimester and the first trimester in terms of it, like nutrition?
Yeah, so we call that the gathering phase, which I really love. We're planning, we're getting things ready, we're maybe doing like our nursery, and so I kind of like that phrase, the gathering phase. And so
that's cute.
It is. I did get it from a book at the first 40 days.
I love that book. I was talking about it today.
Yeah, I think it's on the table over there.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's got really great resources, and I like the way that they bring in those energetics of food as well from the Chinese medicine perspective. And the third trimester, when we look at that being the gathering phase in terms of nutrition, we want to be looking at building your reserves for preparing for labor and delivery, but also for postpartum. It is recommended for postpartum prep really to begin in the third trimester, especially in terms of like your iron storages, your energy, your protein. We want to continue that to your postpartum as well. And so iron, I think, is helpful all the time. You know, anyone that's having a menstrual cycle, iron I want to be looking at. But the third trimester, especially because when you're in labor, your iron storages are going to be depleted. And then in postpartum, we're going to be working at building that back up. However, when you're feeding, your iron storages are also going to your baby, because they're going to want to be getting as much iron as they can. So looking at your iron levels, if you haven't previously to your third trimester, I would want to be looking at that. The difficulty that I have with our healthcare system is that 9 times out of 10, they're calling you when you're anemic, and there's all the subclinical components of our iron storages, and it's so complex that I think there's a lot of misdiagnoses, and I don't want anybody, especially women who are going to seek help for fatigue, low energy, maybe they're having really bad menstrual cramps, that could be related to low iron, and then their doctor's saying like, no, like your iron storages are fine, but maybe they're on the low end, maybe they're not anemic. So we want to be looking at that. Iron supplementing can be really hard to take. It could be constipating, and so in that third trimester that can be difficult, but there are some non-constipating ones. I really like, her name is Lorna, it's a pink bottle. Smart Solutions, that's what it's called. Good flavor. There's also FairPro as well, that is easier on the stomach. And what I do like to recommend for people that might not have a family doctor is you can go and do iron consultations with the pharmacy at Pure Pharmacy.
Oh, this was going to ask my next question. I was like, how the diddly heck do we get these numbers? Because that could take 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you have to kind of be your own advocate. So if you can get in to get your blood work done, visiting a naturopath, if that's accessible to you, or a pharmacist to take a look. However, I mean, I can certainly take a look at that as well. My college does have restrictions in terms of like therapeutic doses that I can recommend. A naturopath might be able to give you a little bit more depth. But we do want your ferritin storages to be closer to 100. So if you're at 60 or something like that, it's not something to worry about. But when we do look at the range for iron, it's huge. It's like 0 to 248, I think, which is just kind of crazy that we would only limit our recommendations for iron when it's like under 30. And I've seen people, like I used to work at a doctor's office here, and I've seen people just be like right on the edge of being anemic, and like they're not being told that, but like maybe they're going in because they have low energy and they're vegan, or you know, like they don't eat red meat. And so I think there's just a lot of room for improvement, and especially in terms of menstrual cycle, labor and delivery, that's something I want to be looking at for sure.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And then for third trimester as well, we want to be looking at your digestion. And so there can be a lot of abdominal pressure, and so there can be a lot of constipation. And so again, kind of going back to those easy to digest foods, so that we're not going to be, you know, straining our body when we're having bowel movements. So like I mentioned, like oatmeal, sweet potatoes, avocado, chia seed, pudding, those are all really nice lubricants to our digestive system. It's good sources of soluble fiber, which means that it brings in water to help create movement. And then we also want to bring that into our postpartum period as well, because we don't want to be straining your body as you're, you know, recovering and healing and things like that as well.
Like warm, slippery foods are really important postpartum.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So like, again, it's like sometimes we think eating like this huge big raw salad is like super quote healthy, quote good, but is that going to be easier for you to digest, or like is like some soup or like some warm, well-cooked stews or like vegetables going to be a little bit easier? It's not necessarily good or bad, but in terms of looking at what's going to be quickest for you to absorb, and then also to help you eliminate as well. So it's just going to be that ease and comfort that you need at that time.
Yeah, I was in the hospital this week at a birth, and she was really hungry, and they were like, well, you can eat before we give you an epidural. And I mean, she took one bite of the sandwich and was like, that's disgusting. I don't know what it was. I was like, what is that? But it was like, you know, processed meats, and it's fine. It's whatever. Some people like that. And then oranges, which were super acidic, are going to cause like more heartburn. And I was kind of like, really? Like, that's what we're offering mamas going like through labor? Like,
it's just kind of lacking, I don't want to say like awareness, but kind of in a way, like I just think it's so generic that they're just not really thinking about that experience that somebody's having, like, oh, like heartburn, or, you know, like eating a cold sandwich to me at the hospital would not personally feel like, if I was in pain, like I don't know if that would be like what I would want to eat if I'm thinking about something that's going to be like comforting and nourishing, and I'm like really hungry. But again, if I'm really hungry, maybe I'll just, you know, eat it, right? It's there.
Some people love it, or like, fuck yeah, like this is great. But it's not the worst, that's for sure. But I always like to grab a bag of soup, like, or, you know, you can go to Whole Foods, you can go to any grocery store, you can get like almost like a barley stew. There's a microwave there, you can heat it up and drink it. You get lots of protein and salt.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's a good point actually, because the other part too of like what I like to recommend for labor and delivery is salt, which is like our minerals, because you're going to be sweating, you're going to have a loss of fluids. And so if you are not able to eat as well, like having like a bone broth or like something like that that's going to contain the protein, collagen, minerals is going to be super easy to digest, but we're also going to be rehydrating ourselves as well. And our adrenals rely a lot on minerals. So we think of like our kidneys and our adrenals, energetically, they're related to the emotion of like fear and like worry, which that can be like a big event for somebody, and it can be worrisome and stressful. And so our adrenals are going to need a little bit more of that replenishment as well. And that could even be like, you know, when we're sleep deprived and things like that, adrenals can be a little bit, you know, sad and depleted. And so when we have some extra minerals, it just kind of nourishes it up and helps to ground the nervous system.
And like, I don't know if you ever had the flu and you like, when you're throwing up, I know this is disgusting, but like think about like whatever you're gonna have, you might throw it up. Most people puke during labor. And so puking like soup is like not the worst thing, you know. You're like, okay, like it's exactly. Just there's it's not too bad. It's not too bad.
And the nice thing about that too is like those minerals, you know, even if you are, you know, puking them up, like our quick to absorb in your digestive system. So even if it doesn't, make it all the way through, it's going to be quickly absorbed. So you are going to get some of that benefit of drinking that as well.
What I like to bring, I usually offer nutrition as part of I let my clients bring like the main meals, but I do bring things because I find people for some reason they don't pack very well. Like I feel like they just rely on the hospital for the food. So I've noticed people don't bring any, like the dads, they don't bring anything like nourishing, and I'm like, I kind of think of it like an iPhone charger. Your iPhone charger is like full, and it's gonna like deplete throughout the whole process. So food and sleep is gonna have only two things that'll help bring it back up. And so I know you don't want to be eating, you're not going to be super hungry, but I do bring like some sort of electrolyte supplement.
Perfect.
Honey candies from Whole Foods.
Love that.
And then this one birth, she liked chocolate and almonds. So I brought her chocolate club and almonds. I figured it's a little bit of like, just a little.
I like that. A
little bit of sugar, some quick things, but also some nuts. And then she didn't want a soup. I offered to bring that. And then, oh my God, I brought Takis, like those Tito Takis, the spicy jalapeno ones for me.
Oh.
I don't know why I thought, I was like, sometimes I get like ravenous during, well, like I usually do, just because you're massaging for so much.
Yeah.
And they were like these jalapeno ones. I had the worst heartburn, and she was like, they smell disturbing. Please take that outside. And I've never had anyone be like repulsed by like, my food that I brought. I was like super embarrassed. I was like, oh my God, true. And the whole day I just had like heartburn to the nines, and I couldn't complain once, of course, because you're just like read the room sort of. But I brought all these like healthy foods and nice things for my clients, and I brought
these really nice
tacky like taquito jalapeno chips for myself, like bonehead.
I mean, they probably taste delicious. I would get the appeal.
So good, but I felt awful.
Yeah.
I felt awful.
Yeah. I don't, even like when I think of Victoria General, like and just like what's around, like it's really limited as well. Like unless you maybe go to like Country Grocer or something like that and try to find something. And so I think in terms of like meal prep, like bone broth or like smoothies or, some kind of like granola bar, something like that. If you've like prepped and like put that away for postpartum potentially, like certainly like grab those before you go would be good.
Smoothies are so good. I have had a request. It was like 9:30 at night. She requested a smoothie, so I had to like run away and go find I found some sort of pre-made smoothie at the grocery store. But just little like healthy food that you can kind of slurp back.
Yeah,
exactly. That could be considered a drink because like you're not really supposed to eat during labor, especially because it could there's risks with epidurals and or C-sections, so they want to limit that so you don't have a full stomach. But
small foods if you can snack a little bit, and then the liquids for sure as well. And so I think I talk about bone broth a lot, and I'm like, I feel like it's, I don't want to call it like a fad, but it's definitely I feel like it's been a hot food for a while, and I just think it's a hot food for a reason. Like it's got so many amazing benefits to it, and I just think for labor and delivery, pregnancy, postpartum, it's so nourishing. And so, I mean, you can buy it if you really don't want to make it, but it's easy to make, and I just let it sit in my crock pot overnight. I'm a low maintenance nutritionist, and so as much as like I would want to be cooking all day, it's not always realistic, but I feel like bone broth is one that I just can put in my crock pot, not think about it, put it in my freezer, and then it's easy to grab.
I love it. It tastes so good.
It is. I love it.
You were mentioning that a lot of people focus on pregnancy, but postpartum is one of like the main areas that kind of slacks in our health, in the health world in general. Like you give birth, and talking to pelvic floor physio, you go to get a surgery, and they're have you going to a physio that day, but with birth, like you have a couple of days, and then you're kind of off on your merry way.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear like what kind of tools or support systems that you would recommend.
Yeah, I think, sticking with some of the things that we've talked about, but for postpartum, we really want to be looking at that rest, recovery. In Chinese medicine, they describe it as like you're kind of like really, your energy is really open after that, and vulnerable. You know, like you've given birth, you've, you know, delivered your placenta, like your system's kind of open. And so we want to kind of cocoon and bring that protective energy back into yourself. And I think food can be a really nourishing way of comfort as well. But we want also to make it work in terms of what we're looking for postpartum healing. So circulation is one. So we want to be bringing back warmth and blood circulation to your body, especially to your uterus, as you're going to be healing and recovering and going back to its normal size. And then also if you've experienced any like tears and things like that, we want to be bringing that warmth and that healing to those parts of our body. And so again, warm foods, really well cooked foods, that's going to be the easiest way to bring that circulation and that internal warmth inside out. The nice thing I like about it is that it's also fall and winter, and so it kind of just goes in hand with like what we want to be eating for winter. But the well and warm cooked foods are going to be really easy to assimilate because we want that quick nutrition. We also want things to be easily digestible with reducing abdominal pressure. We also want foods to have a bit of moisture to them as well. So that fat component, that is going to be really grounding to your nervous system as you're tired, you're sleep deprived, you're building up those reserves. Fats are also really great for brain fog and for, you know, kind of trying to get through the day, and for your blood sugar levels as well. And so that's again like avocados, like dates, that can be smoked salmon if you're eating fish, again, salmon and food sources as well through fish. And that hydration is also going to be really lubricating to your digestive system for bowel movements as well. The other thing that I do like about fats is that with the omegas, there's omegas in milk as well. So if you're feeding, then omegas is going to be really nourishing and replenishing to your system in that way. And then we also want to be looking at, if you want to talk about foods specifically for feeding, I think that could be another helpful thing, because I think people are kind of curious about like what foods that they eat and what can be helpful for feeding. And we want to look at foods that contain galactagogues, which is just super fun to say. And I always have to like autocorrect like how I'm typing it or spelling it. So I'm like, how do I spell this again? But it's super fun to say. But those are going to be helpful for the secretion and production of milk. And so that's found in chia seeds, chickpeas, garlic, ginger, oats is one that's like really common. So if you are preparing for postpartum and you're doing like some meal prep snacks, there's a lot of recipes for lactation cookies, and a lot of them do contain oats. And so actually my friend, Megan, there's a local company called Chima, and they also make lactation cookies, and they're delicious.
I love cookies.
They're so good.
I love cookies so much.
They're delish. They got chocolate in them.
Oh, yeah.
Really good, amazing ingredients.
How many should you eat a day?
I mean,
2 or 3?
I think, honestly, yeah, all. I think what I love about them too is that I think 2, because, I mean, I'd have to ask her about this, but they have a yin cookie and a yang cookie. So I think you could ideally have 2, and then you could have like your yang cookie when you wake up and like your yin cookie in the evening, which I think is so
cute.
Oh, right? Yeah, their Instagram is fire. So they do special orders, and they also have mushrooms in there as well. They have like Chinese, it's just like so thoughtfully curated. Like I can't speak highly enough about it, but having things that are going to be helpful for lactation and also just for grounding your nervous system as well. It's going to take a bit of time, and I think, you know, having things prepared is like really helpful, and things to be quick for you to have on hand, especially just like one-handed foods, especially if your other hand is tied up with baby and you're feeding. I'd also recommend doing like a little feeding station of like granola bars and like little snacks on hand, like teas and things.
That's my favorite tip for people, like snack stations.
Yes, snack stations.
Water.
Yes. Yeah.
Little energy balls.
At 3 a.m, like I just want people to feel like it's just there. Like that, I don't want people to have to think about it. I mean, it does take a little bit of prep work at the beginning, but then again, like you can get things that are just pre-made. Like let's just make it easy. I don't expect anybody to be like cooking all day. That's not really realistic for some people. If you can and you want to and you have it prepped, like love that. But we just want to keep it simple, really. And at 3 a.m, again, like that warmth and stuff. Like if something is cold, then sure, like if that's what you want to eat, like there's no hard rules. But that warmth as well is just going to kind of bring this back to that circulation piece, that grounding of the nervous system piece, and it's just going to be easier for our bodies to digest.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's a Refire. They do some prep meals. I bought one. They're not the most like cheapest route, that's for sure. But if you, they do like almost like lasagnas, but like better, like home cooked meals. They have like different stews.
I like that.
Yeah, it's on a it's near Esquimalt on Admiral's Road, and they have some really good meal prep stuff you can just put in the oven and kind of press the button. I know like lasagnas are a big thing. Just like things that you think about, like putting in the oven, press the button, and then it'll be ready.
Yeah.
Stuff you don't have to prep too much.
Yeah. Not even think about it. You know, I think having even just like a couple meals that you can, you know, reach out to like those types of places. And also like if just grabbing and go in the freezer section as well, just like quick things, you know. Yeah.
A lot of people are like, oh, what what should I get, like as a doula, like what should I get my friend who's pregnant, like as a gift, or like what would be helpful? And I feel like food would be the most helpful, so I usually recommend food trains.
Yeah,
it's a website, it's free, where people can be allocated to certain days of the week. They can also give you gift cards for your favorite restaurants. So food is like one of the most important things you can prepare for postpartum. So I do recommend doing some cooking before and having some frozen things and like those little energy balls, that kind of stuff, and bone broths.
Yeah.
But as well, having support in that way, people can bring you food. You can leave a little cooler on your front step.
Yeah.
And if the cooler's out, that means don't come in, just drop food off. But if it's not there, so there's like a little bit of boundary setting as well. But
I love that.
Yeah, I feel like having a proper nutrition will, you know, decrease your chances of postpartum depression majorly too, right? So
absolutely. And you know, thyroid is another one too that comes up for a lot of people, and you know, those are things that we can get through our food. And iron as well is also linked to postpartum depression and like low energy and fatigue. And so again, being your advocate, checking your blood work, looking at your, you know, iron storages as well. This is also where, like, kind of going back, we talked about that folic acid and folate, but just kind of going back to B vitamins. B vitamins help to absorb iron as well. So continuing with your prenatal, maybe continue with like a B12 supplement. Also vitamin C is another one that I like to mention for postpartum. We often think of it in terms of like our immune system, but vitamin C is also a cofactor in the production of collagen. So for our recovery and for repairs, all of our ligaments and things like that are going to need an extra boost of vitamin C, which is found in a lot of fruits and vegetables. We kind of think of it just in fruits, but there's lots of vitamin C in like broccoli and cauliflower and other vegetables and potatoes that we might not think about.
So you don't need a supplement for all of it. You just kind of have like a well-balanced diet. I've heard that if you go and try a new vegetable in the grocery store, like every time you go, not like a new one, but trying like to rotate, so you have like a wide variety of different veggies. Not that I actually do that. I should go in there. There's some.
I mean, we have our routine, and we have the ones that we like, and it's very easy to, you know what to cook with it, and maybe you have your like staple. I call them like lazy girl meals. And
I'm gonna learn how to cook an artichoke. I tried once.
Yeah,
brutal.
Actually, really, they're so beautiful when they flower. They're just like gorgeous.
And they taste amazing. I had a roommate who cooked artichokes, like a whole one, and I tried doing it, and then I had to throw it out.
Oh no, devastating.
Yeah. What are artichokes good for?
Artichokes are good
on the spot.
I'm on the spot.
You know the answer too.
They are good for your liver.
Yeah.
Which liver is really great for processing our hormones, especially for estrogen detoxing, which is not normally a concern like postpartum because your progesterone levels are going to be high. But for anybody that has like endometriosis or estrogen dominant PCOS, artichokes are great for that. I think they contain. Actually, I don't think they contain vitamin A or vitamin K, but they probably do contain vitamin C for sure. Most fruits and vegetables do. Nice. But yeah, definitely they have the affinity for your liver because they have that bitter taste. Even though we're cooking them and we might be adding like cheese and like other things to it, they are a bitter vegetable.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for touching on the postpartum aspect. I want to go more into the postpartum period and interview more people just because it's a whole industry in itself. Like I know there's full spectrum doulas. I'm trained as a full spectrum doula. So I've learned a lot about the postpartum. I did a nutrition course through Pacific Rim as well. I trained I did my doula course there as well, the 4-month one. And I decided to put my focus more on birth because I found that there wasn't a lot of, that's not true, but there's a lot more postpartum doulas than there are birth doulas. So I put my focus in there, and I feel like just getting to chat a bit more and having more people educate my clients on how to best support themselves postpartum is major, because I feel like I'm maybe not educating them as much. And now talking to you, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much with pregnancy and birth, and
there is.
It's like overwhelming.
It can be daunting, and I think where I really like to come in is that I think there can be a lot of support for pregnancy and postpartum. I feel like a lot of the focus is like your baby and hitting the milestones, right? But where I like to come in is I'm wanting to support the parent. You're going through all of this, and are you feeling nourished? Do you feel like you're being taken care of? And I don't know if the medical system always, is putting the care and attention on that period as well too. And I think a lot of things can be written off because you're postpartum, like low energy, fatigue, your symptoms and experiences, I think can be written off as like, well, you just had a baby, and you're just going to be tired for the rest of your life. And, I think that's like really dismissive to someone who is feeling tired, and I want them to feel like they have a place to like be cared for and like nourished. Like, okay, let's look at like what this looks like for you and what we can work with in terms that you feel like your cares and your like concerns are being met. So I don't know if it's really always supported in like our healthcare system, especially for anybody who's like menstruating. I think there's like that stigma there of you're dismissed due to that, like your pain and is attributed to like your cycle, and things just like aren't really looked at with the scope that maybe somebody is needing. And so,
or just, I hate to say it, just like not like I'm pointing me, I'm a girl, but also just being like a female in general. There's a lot of things being that can be dismissed.
Big time.
I have hopes that it's changing, and I think it is. But there, as
I hope so too. I hope that things are evolving, and I even think of like, when my experience like growing up too, like like you just kind of have to take it. Like you have cramps, like don't care, like you have to go to school, you got to go to soccer practice. Like there's not a lot of room for what you're going through and your experiences. And I don't think even just like our way of living has a lot of softness into it too sometimes. And so I think bringing that softness through food and like that indulgence and that nourishment just to like bring us back to like that feminine part of ourselves is like really important, because we can get kind of caught up in survival mode for one, like working, and that can be a very like quote quote yang energy to be in, and we're required to be all these things at once, and it can be exhausting.
Especially with so many hormonal imbalances. I'm pretty sure I got a lot of testosterone, which is like what makes me do this podcast and be such a like crazy woman, because I have so many hats and roles. But definitely like I'm very young, very testosterone, and I use it to my advantage because it's like but I have to like schedule softness, and I do that with the yoga, and my workplace is pretty chill, but I feel that
there's some, it's a practice, I think too. Like we have to make the time for ourselves to kind of even just ground too. And I it's one thing to like talk about all these things, and like I have a crazy chaotic schedule, and I do night shifts, and I'm scattered a lot of the times.
What do you do for night shifts?
So I work at, I also wear a lot of hats. So I work for the hospital in switchboard casually, and then I also work for the fire department doing like 911 dispatching. So my other jobs are, they're intense in terms of
911 dispatching. I
would
love to just hang out with you. That's why I chat about this job.
Totally.
Oh my god.
I just started in April, but I used to work at the police station, so I'm I'm a Scorpio, and apparently Scorpios either work in hospitals or the police. That's what my psychic tells me. So I guess I'm right on brand for that as well. But again, it just kind of goes back to that like survival mode piece, and I have to ask myself, like, you know, like, why am I working all these jobs and I'm all over the place, and as much as like they're interesting, it doesn't really bring me into that like softness. I'm like, yep, gotta go. And sometimes it totally works for me and I'm like, you know, ready to go. But when I was off birth control, I really struggled in the week before my period, like low energy and like struggling to get out of bed, and it's just like really hard to like feel all these fluctuations that you're going through while you're trying to accomplish and do other things in a system that's like not set up for women and is not set up for softness, you know, and then you're dismissed maybe if you do present that way. So I really found like when I was in school and I had the time to like enjoy my cooking and I was in a bit of a better routine, that I felt a little bit more myself. So it is a practice. So I mean, I say all these things, but I also have to like honor the fact that like I am a chaotic Libra moon also with the Capricorn rising. So I'm like, you know, I have a lot of areas that I put myself into, and nutrition is something that like I struggle with too. And so I want people to know that, because it's hard, and it's hard to like, it's a chore sometimes to like eat, and it's sometimes out of survival, and so it can feel draining. And I hear that a lot with like older generations. Like my mom has 9 sisters, and so just like all the cooking that you've done over the years for your family, and it just kind of like, you kind of get burnt out. It's like, what do I eat? I don't want to cook. And so, you know, bringing those small practices in where we can, you know, enjoy what we're eating, make our meal a little bit more of like an experience, like light a candle, like put on your favorite tunes or something. And that doesn't have to be every day, but when you can find this time to do that, I think people will just kind of feel a little bit more connected to their food.
Maybe I'm soft. I don't know. I feel like also, well, not that we get into too much of it, but going back to this like softness, my goal this year was to embrace more femininity and softness. So I kind of stopped like training hard at the gym and taking on too many clients. But there's a backlash, and we don't really like, it's a luxury to be really like feminine and soft, I feel like, because it's like, oh, less money, and like for me, like my body changes when I'm more gentle on myself, like that yang kind of hardcore energy is what puts me, I get into the gym and I get my hip hop and I'm like, oh yeah, you know,
I mean,
it's just
I love
like
it
I
too.
want to go hard, you know, but
we need a little bit of that firiness for
I
sure.
know
some of that sizzle.
Okay, so in hearing this and chatting, I'm hoping that you've sparked interest for people to maybe seek a nutritionalist. So maybe you could chat about how people can find you, and like what kind of support would it look like working with a nutritionalist if no one's never done it before?
So I think the easiest way would be, you know, through Lagoon here through the clinic, and then I also have my website, which is www.nourishwithmeg.com, or through Instagram as well if you're curious on just like learning more about me and what I have to offer and learning more about that. A appointment, one thing I love about having the one-on-one is that I can look at what your unique needs are. And so again, I think that comes through with, we have this idea sometimes of what nutrition is and what we're supposed to be eating, but I think having someone that can just spend the time with you to go through it and give you that reassurance of you are doing a good job, you are nourishing yourself, let's tweak it. We can kind of work through maybe some of the more emotional aspects of food. And so I'm a nutritionist, but a lot of it is like counseling, and a lot of it is just like giving yourself permission to eat, and like giving yourself permission to have those days where you indulge and like you listen to your cravings. And it is about what you eat, but it's also sometimes about how you eat as well. And it's a lot of unlearning. So I think the one-on-one is a benefit for someone who might want the space to kind of go through that a little bit more. I like to usually give 3 therapeutic overviews for my first appointment, and usually most of my appointments I like to do therapeutic overviews. I'm certainly along the lines of doing it that way as opposed to doing like a meal plan. I think for your best success and consistency, starting small with small attainable goals. And those therapeutic outlines are not like you have to do these things. Like maybe you just pick one and you start there, and then we'll have a follow-up, and maybe we'll talk about why that didn't work for you, and we can look at the second one and we can build it from there. But nutrition is not something that, you know, just one day it just, you know, it's going to take a little bit of time, especially when we have these deep-rooted patterns and emotions and experiences that are tied to our food. It is going to take time to shift some of those things. And I like to use food as that tool for healing. And so it is something that I want to give the space and care to somebody, and I don't want to bring a lot of info for the first one. So be gentle with yourself is what I always say too, like you're doing a good job. And I think even just for myself, when I have appointments with like anybody that's talking to me about nutrition and like my health as well, even though I have all this information, I think it's just nice to sit down with somebody and have the time and space to do that. And then you'll also kind of remember things like, oh yeah, I used to do this and that made me feel really good. Like, why don't I do that again? And so it's just good to just have those conversations, I think, especially when it comes to nutrition. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot on TikTok, Instagram, all of the social media platforms, and a lot of it can be fear-based as well, and it can be confusing. And so I think what I hope to offer is a gentle person who can kind of work through maybe some of those questions that people have and just kind of bring it back to basics, keep it really simple. And that's why I like to start with just 3 therapeutic overviews. And an example of that could be increased protein. Like maybe I've looked at what you're eating and I'm seeing, you know, maybe in the morning or lunchtime you could use a bit of extra protein, which actually is pretty on brand because most people, from what I've seen, including myself, struggle with like breakfast and lunch. I see gaps there for increase of protein that can be needed. So increasing protein, and then I'll give you some examples of ways to increase your protein. And I like to use what you're already doing. Like I might bring in some new things, but I like to work with what you're doing. I don't want to, it's hard to change your eating patterns and routines. And so for your success, let's work with what you're already doing. And then like another example of that could be like liver support, for example. Like say you're someone who's struggling with their cycle and their hormones, you need some liver support to be able to process your hormones. And so here are the ways that eating these foods and doing these things could be helpful for your liver. And so I usually recommend 3 appointments for someone to really see the benefits and the shifts of these small goals and steps that we're going to be working through together. And I think just having that person there to check in, because I know even just for myself, when I get, you know, into a good routine, and sometimes, you know, life is busy and it's chaotic, and then I'm like, oh, I'm not prepping my breakfast, or I'm not eating this, and I know I feel better when I eat this. It's a good check-in point for someone for consistency and for success, and also just for you to feel better. Like maybe there's something that's going on for you, and you know, should have somebody there with you to check in and like, did that feel good? Do you want to shift anything? Like it's just giving yourself the space, really.
I'm intrigued now. I'm like, oh, I want to try it, book in. I've been like, to be honest, I was gonna book in with you, and I was tracking what I ate for a bit, because I was like, oh, I'm gonna track it and see, just so I had data, and show you what I was eating. But then I stopped tracking it because I found that miserable. But it's a necessary evil. It's like budgeting, right? You know, like you don't want to be budgeting every single, well, you do want to budget every month, but you know what I mean? You don't want to be like watching your bank account every single month, just going in and out. But like, it is good to do once in a while, just for to realize. I was like, holy crap, I'm eating a lot of crap. Like I'm eating way too much food in general. Like I was just like, my protein was low, my calories were all out of whack. And then as soon as I started eating lots of protein, I was so full. I couldn't eat. I was so full. I was like, I can't eat. Like I was literally felt so good and so full all the time. It was insanity. Like I was like, whoa. Yeah,
protein is really really the best. Honestly, it's needed.
Yeah, and I like lost a lot of abdominal weight. Like it was pretty insane. I don't know why I stopped doing that. I think I was just also repulsed by eating so much meat.
Yeah. It can be a lot.
Yeah,
I know when we look at like how much protein, which I also feel like is very hot right now, like on social media, like protein, like getting, you know, the grams, the gains, so to say. It can feel like, oh my god, like I'm eating a lot. It's kind of counterintuitive, I think, also too, of like what we've been taught, you know, and like especially coming from like the Paris Hilton, Nicole Richie era, like very, very thin. It can be hard for people to be like, oh my god, I have to eat this much. Like maybe you're not hungry for that either, and that's kind of where we're, you know, slowly building maybe some of those macros or those pieces as well. And I like, you know, being able to check in with yourself and like writing things down, you know, if it's not coming from a place where it's like restrictive, or, you know, you're allowing yourself to like not feel guilty or like shame in like what you're eating. Cause I'll fully say like I eat croissants all the time, and like I love making cakes and cookies, and I want people to feel like they can do that as well. But it's really just bringing that awareness and that connection to what you're eating, which I think is like the most healing thing about food. And it's, you know, it's not really always about what you're eating, but you're bringing that awareness. Like say you're having something delicious, but in the back of your mind you're going, oh, okay, like I'm eating these yams because they're supporting my estrogen and my vitamin A, and like just that makes you feel good too. Like you're understanding the deeper concept of that, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm excited. I feel like this is just such an important piece, and I hope that you guys all found this informative and it sparked some questions and some curiosity around your own food and diet, and hopefully even just from this episode you can take some tips and just apply it to your next meal. I know I'm going to definitely consider what I'm eating.
I would say the one thing that I love to offer is anything what you're eating, let's make it more digestible, and the easiest way to do that is greens. And so looking at your food, this is I guess what I'll leave for like my hot tip. Say you have a meal like even like Thanksgiving this weekend, for example. If you're having a meal that's like a little bit heavier or has a bit more like fat to it, does it have greens? Another way that you can increase the digestion of that is like through vitamin C and sour flavors. So a lemon wedge, if you just want to squeeze that over your meals, that sour flavor is going to increase your gallbladder secretions and your liver support, and then you're not going to feel as like bloated and heavy and like sluggish after. And so greens, sours help your liver, which helps your digestion, and if your digestion feels good, you feel good. So I try to bring in some fresh herbs or greens to every meal, especially heavy ones. So
cool.
Even just having lemon water with your Thanksgiving
I'm gonna do
meal.
that.
Yeah. Is that with your wine? Yeah.
That's why I was like,
yeah.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
We're
of the
I have Chardonnay.
Girlhood is having 3 drinks at once, so we're gonna have lemon water and wine.
Oh yeah, I do the same thing, like the matcha, the smoothie, and the tea.
The Diet Coke. Yeah, for sure.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
That was Nourish with Meg.